Well, hello, friend, and welcome to the People Economy Podcast. Today is our first episode, and I really couldn't think of a better guest to fit the first episode than my friend Rich Sheridan. Now, you probably don't know who Rich is. Rich is the CEO and president of Menlo Innovations, which is a software company in Ann Arbor, Michigan. We'll get into that in the conversation, but really, what inspires me most about Rich, there's a lot of things that inspire me about Rich, and it has nothing to do with his resume at all. It has to do with his heart. Not only his heart, but the way he leads and loves people. And this is what you're going to experience coming oozing from him today. So pull up a chair and let's talk with Rich Sheridan.
Rich, you once drove back roads to get to work because the daily routine felt more like dread than purpose. What was it like? And what did you learn about work and really about what work should never be on those commutes?
I had an efficient route to work, and I think there came this point where I didn't want to get there as soon as normal. And that's when I started taking those back roads. And um, it dawned on me at a certain point that I needed to ask myself, what's going on? Sort of self-analysis, if you will, to say, why don't you want to be at work? Why are you actually driving past your work location and having double back? Why are you going out in the country? And I realized that number one, I needed time to think. And what I needed to think about is, do I really want to keep doing this? I was good at what I did. I just realized it was no longer fulfilling. It was literally just a job and a paycheck at that point. And that's when some really serious self-reflection kicked in. And I realized that you got to do something about this. You can't. I was in my 30s at the time. I thought I got another 30 years ahead of me. I can't keep doing this.
So along those lines, you had a long career in tech before you founded Menlo Innovations. What was there a moment or was there a spark besides that dread that you just hinted to? What was the moment that said work needs to be fun and I'm going to be part of the solution?
Yeah, I think there was that in the back of my mind kind of forever. I had a really great start in technology when I was just a kid. I experienced that camaraderie and human energy in my earliest days. And I think when you have those kind of experiences when you're young, and then life just happens the way life happens. But I was never far enough away from that sort of youthful experience where I forgot what it was like. And I wanted to recapture that magic. And that became kind of this mantra inside of me is like, you got to get back to that. You've got to get back to that dream of your youth. And so I would say that there was a slow, inexorable march inside my brain to get back. And then, yes, in fact, there were click moments. And the biggest one happened, there's probably two big ones. One was 1997 when I got promoted to VP by my boss, Bob Nero, who's still a very good friend of mine. And I told him no. I told him I didn't want the responsibility of being an executive of a troubled public company because I knew that would just consume my personal life in a way that I wasn't willing to do. And he was upset with me because he had sort of handpicked me from a whole bunch of people that could have been in that VP of R&D position. And that night, I went home and I really thought about it. And I thought, you know what? This is what you've been waiting for. You are now being given the perch from which you can do anything you want with your technical team. And I went back the next morning and I told him, Bob, I'm going to do it. I'll take the job on one condition. And he was intrigued because I had just told him no the night before. And here's the guy that pissed him off the day before. And this guy's coming back with a condition. And I said, yeah. I said, I want to build the best damn software team this town has ever seen, and I need your help to do it. And he looked at me and he goes, "What happened last night?" And I said, I've I've held on to this dream of my youth, and I want to get back to that dream. And I figure this is my shot. This is my one last shot, right? It sounds like an Eminem song, you know. And uh, and I took it, and for 2 years I just worked harder, and that
Mhm.
made like modest incremental improvements, nowhere near what I was looking for. And then 1999 was actually the big click moment for me. I'd met my co-founder, James. He was a consultant I brought in to help me do some interesting technology things with my team, but he thought differently. He thought differently
Mhm.
like I did. I read a book by a gentleman named Kent Beck, who wrote the famous book, Extreme Programming Explained. And then I saw a video on an industrial design firm in California called IDEO. And those three things all happened very compressed time frame, probably 6 to 8 weeks within one another, that all of those things happened. And it was literally click.
Mhm.
I knew what I was going to do. I knew how I was going to do it. And over the next 2 years, transformed that tired old public company where I was VP of R&D into something that looks a lot like Menlo does to this day. And I got back. I didn't use the word back then, but there was no question I got back to joy in my career
Mhm.
at that point. And then it was all taken away. In 2001, the dot-com bubble burst. The California company that purchased us had to close every remote office they had, including mine. And I lost everything except what I had learned in those 2 years. And that became the basis for Menlo.
So let's go there for a second because that was going to be my next question, anyways. Building Menlo, founding Menlo in the midst of a tech collapse, when the world and everything else seems to be against you, but you keep referencing the word joy, which obviously has become a part of a brand language for you. What was your North Star in all that chaos of just building Menlo?
Yeah, I would say that childhood dream was absolutely there. But it took me a while to enunciate it, to really say, what was it that I actually wanted out of what I was doing? Because, I remembered the thrill of technology and getting people working together in a highly collaborative way, all the things we have still to this day at Menlo. But I had to just keep digging deeper to figure out what is it? What was that North Star for me? And I used to think it was the tech stuff. And then one day it dawned on me based on a story that had reemerged in my brain from when I was about 10. And it was that my mom and dad had gone out to dinner and they had bought this sort of IKEA bookshelf, but it wasn't IKEA, right? And it was out
Mm-hmm.
in the garage. 10-year-old engineer said, "I'm going to build that for them." It was this big bookshelf they were going to put in the living room. And it was like 8 feet wide and 6 feet tall. And I'm out in the garage by myself, reading the instruction manuals, putting everything together. And it dawned on me, like, darn it, they want it in the living room, but you built it in the garage. And so I
Yeah.
literally inched that thing into the house, set up my
Mm-hmm.
dad's books, my mom's knickknacks, wired up the stereo. And when they walked in the door, my mom cried. And, they were amazed and they were just so pleased that I would think to do that, that's how I spent my time when they were off having dinner and seeing a movie. And I realized in that story was what I was pursuing. And it's this version of joy that is about serving others. That when the work of our hearts, our hands, and our minds delights those we intend to serve, we get joy out of that experience. And that's what I recognized in that story was this is what I want to do with software. This is my purpose in life. I want to take the work of our team, deliver it to the world, literally deliver it because so much software never gets out the door, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the saddest stories of all in software is the people who slave away for years and never have their projects or their work see the light of day. And I didn't want that. And I'd had a lot of that too. And so I wanted it to get out into the world, but more than that, more than just delivering, I wanted the work we did to delight the people who are going to use it every day in their lives. And that to me became the definition for joy when the work of our hearts, our hands, and our minds serves others and delights them.
Now, in the present day, as you have thousands yearly coming in to see the Menlo Way, how far are you away from, or are you closer than ever to the original vision?
Pretty darn close. We work in a big open room. We work shoulder to shoulder. We're a weird software company. We're actually back in person 5 days a week,
What a
which,
concept.
it's literally like controversial these days, right? Um, and um, so I mean, we survived obviously the pandemic, which literally was a march of survival because it wasn't
Mm.
just the dismantling of the in-person culture, which we handled just fine. But it was the 60% revenue drop that happened alongside of that because of the economic effects of the pandemic. And so we had to rebuild kind of everything at that point, and we did. When people come in now, just in spirit of your question, the same thing happens as when they were coming in before the pandemic. They literally walk into our place, and the first word out of their mouths is, and it's because the human energy in the room is palpable. You can hear, I mean, we're working in pairs, we're working shoulder to shoulder, we're working in a big open room. I sit out in the room with everybody else, and you can feel it. It's just there. You can feel the energy of the team. And I get to visit that every single day. And it is just delightful.
Which leads me to your book, Joy Inc., which is kind of the blueprint for creating what you just talked about, the workplace that people love, right? For the person that's in the car that's dreading the Monday drive and not looking like, just the second they wake up Monday, they're eager for Friday and they're skeptical of a Joy First company. What does Joy First feel like on a Monday morning?
So, uh, first of all, clarity over ambiguity. Too many days, either me personally or the people I was leading would come in and they were feeling like jugglers, right? Like I've got 8 different priorities and I know they're all important, but I can only work on one of them at a time and I'm not sure which one to choose. So it was probably like juggling. You just pick the one that was in your hand at the moment. You let all the others fall to the ground. And for us, there's no ambiguity around what people's priorities are. Our system of work, and this is important, is that we're systems thinkers at our hearts. Simple, repeatable, measurable, visible systems is probably what had appealed to me about Kent Beck's descriptions of extreme programming. And so there's these simple systems of work. When people come in, they 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 know with great certainty exactly which project they're going to be working on that day, who exactly they're going to be paired with, where exactly they're supposed to sit doing the work, what exactly is expected of them that day, in the order it's expected of them, and uh, they know our methods and how we're going to write the code, so it's just well understood by everybody on the team. And that kind of clarity, which my team actually refers to, you'll love this. They call it freedom through tyranny. Okay. Which does that, it sounds, like, wait a minute, where does tyranny fit into joy, right? Well, the tyranny is all those things I described, right? That high clarity. But then the freedom kicks in because now they are free to pursue the work that they love to do, almost unfettered by anyone hanging over their shoulders saying, hey, what you working on? Stop working on this, start working on that. I need you to do 3 things at once, which nobody can really do. And and how did that thing I asked you about yesterday go? And like, well, I never got to it because you had added 3 more things on at the end of the day. And most people literally live in their work lives in a sea of ambiguity. And they go
Mm.
home like I did in my trough of disillusionment days. And my wife would look at tired me. I was usually coming home late. It was usually overtime. Dinner was cold in the microwave waiting for me. And she'd look at me and say, honey, you look really tired. Did you get a lot done today? And I thought, you know what?
Mm.
No, I actually got nothing done today. I was busy. I was running from meeting to meeting and hot phone call to hot phone call and problem to problem. I felt important. I felt needed. But when I got home and she looked at me and said, "Did you get a lot done today?" I was like, "No, I actually
Mm,
got nothing done today."
mm.
And those kind of feelings for most of us in our work lives just start to eat away at us, right? Because now we're not getting any joy from work. The ability for people to go to work and get meaningful things done, I think, is very high on the joy list for me.
Very, very, so good, so relatable. Um,
Yeah,
Pivoting a bit.
when I love the word relatable because when I tell these in my talks and even in the book, people are like, "Who have you been talking to at my company? You just described my day, right?" Like, oh no, I've described everybody's day. This is like,
Yeah.
I mean, I've given talks literally around the planet on this, and it's no different in Tokyo versus Berlin versus Bangalore versus Singapore. It's the same everywhere.
Hmm.
And quite frankly, I mean, the thing that probably still drives me to this day personally is that it doesn't have to be that way.
This isn't on my list of questions, but I'm curious about the open concept that you have in the workspace. One of the obviously, like you've been on the speaking circuit, you understand this philosophy. One philosophy that's kind of reigns supreme in a lot of this is people want to be a part of something bigger than themselves, right? That
Mhm.
argument.
Yep.
How does clarity fit into that belief at Menlo specifically?
Yeah. So what a team of people would be doing, working. So we're, just for your audience to be clear, we're a custom software design and development firm. So we design and build custom software on behalf of our business clients. Um, there is very, very, very little software today that can be built by an individual.
Hmm.
It always requires a collaborative effort, even with AI, creeping in from around the edges. It's still going to require a collaboration of lots of people. So right there, that general statement, which is just, I will say, universally true, at least in complex business software, is you have a team of people, and each individual, of course, is working on something bigger than themselves, bigger than they could do by themselves in a rational amount of time based on what the business needs. So now, working together, shoulder to shoulder in pairs, and we switch the pairs every 5 days. So people are seeing all the pieces
Hmm.
and parts, but each day they're working on one part of it. But because they're collaborating with their peers, they can see this whole big thing coming into focus. And it comes into focus once a week in our process because we have a weekly show and tell event with our clients, where our clients will literally get to experience the advancing work we're doing on their potentially multi-year project. And so every week, at least once a week, they're going to be in a room these days, mostly on Zoom calls with our clients because they're all over the country. And they're going to see the reaction of the people they're serving. They're going to see the reaction and saying, people are getting excited about the work we're doing. They want to, people start clamoring, when will this be ready? I can't wait to use it. And when you start getting that kind of feedback over and over again, they realize this is something bigger than me.
So you came up with Chief Joy Officer, which I love that term. First off, um,
Thank
you
you.
shift from culture to leadership. What's the difference?
Well, culture is our practices, our processes. It's, every element of the culture is how do we get the people to interrelate to one another, right? What systems of work do we have that can keep everything moving with clarity and high human energy and that sort of thing? And leadership is, I have an airplane model that I use that talks about that as a culture, we need to make sure we have more human energy lifting us than bureaucratic processes pulling us down, and more purpose pulling us than fear dragging us.
Hmm.
And so I just have that simple mental model. But in many ways, the leaders are the pilots of those airplanes. How do we make sure that we're paying attention to everything that's going on? And when things are going wrong, what are we going to do? How are we going to interrelate? How do we make sure we're not just walking around pounding our fist on the table saying, well, you just got to get it done. Um, in many ways, the leaders need to be captains of the systems of work itself. Not that they're the only ones working on it, because our team, through a model of run the experiment, which is a very famous phrase at Menlo, uh, adapts itself over time based on inputs from the team itself.
Hmm.
We try and, I think in some ways leadership is also about creating a condition that feels like you've given your team permission to try things that they don't know if they're going to work or not. And if they don't work, they're not going to be, you know, ridiculed uh, and made to feel bad, because you only have to do that a couple of times before experiments stop flowing. So,
Hmm.
Influence rarely flows one direction. You talk as much, if not more, about influencing up more than influencing down. Can you explain the beauty of influence in that conversation?
yeah, ultimately, and this was a lesson I had to learn early on in my career. Well, probably at a point of inflection in my career, I will say, and that was that, um, I was frustrated. I had this picture in my head of what could potentially end the frustration, right? That would potentially, create a better system of work. And I was trying to explain it to my peers on the executive team and to my boss, the CEO. And because we were a public company, some board members. And even because my boss was smart enough to realize this was important, he introduced me to a couple of significant shareholders of Interface Systems just to make sure everybody was trying to see things the way I saw them. Well, at first, in those early conversations with anybody, I was describing it in technical terms. I was
Hmm.
describing it in the terms of the programmer, and I wasn't getting traction. People are like, "Oh, that's great, Rich. I'm glad you have those ideas." No, we're not going to spend any money on that stuff. And then finally, I learned to speak in the words of the people I was trying to influence, because I had to start to think about, I know what's important to me. What's important to them? What's
Hmm.
keeping them up at night? There was plenty of stuff keeping me up at night, but what was it that was keeping them up at night? And how could I ease that burden for them through the work I was going to do? And, a real famous moment for me was I was trying to get the Java factory at Interface Systems going and hiring this consultant, James Goebel, and his team of people to help us. And it was going to be expensive. And my boss kept asking me how much. I said, Bob, it doesn't matter how much. This is so important. We got to do this. Well, it was important to me, but he wanted to know what the price tag was. And when I finally told him, he threw me out of his office, and he's like, Rich, we can't afford that. And so I kept running up that hill with my technical arguments, and it wasn't working. And Bob's a good guy. I mean, he wasn't being an irrational boss or anything. I got it. Well, one day I came to him and I said, Hey, Bob, we're running out of money. He goes, Yep, you're right. We are. And I said, when a public company runs out of money before the products that you're wanting my team to build to rescue us and move us from the old days to the internet days, which is what he was expecting of me, I said, there's only three things I know we can do. I said, we can do a secondary public offering, raise money in the public markets. We can sell the company in a merger and acquisition, or we try and take the company private with a private equity play. I said, Bob, I think those are the only options we had. And he said, Yep, you see things clearly, Rich. That's exactly where we're headed. And I said, Well, as far as I know, Bob, any one of those transactions, those investors are going to send a due diligence team to our technical product firm. And the first stop is going to be my end of the building. They're going to look at my people, my process, and my products. And I said, We are not going to pass muster. We're not going to get the money, and we're going to go out of business. I said, That's why I need to do this initiative so that doesn't happen. And what I was doing was I was speaking in terms he understood that was important to him, that was keeping him up at night. He literally signed the deal that afternoon.
Hmm.
And the rest is history. And oh, by the way, I wish I was always this good with a crystal ball. 6 months after I started that process, Tumbleweed Communications, a California tech firm, sent a due diligence team to my end of the building, and
Mm.
they bought the company based on what they saw in my team for all that transition I did because of what the investment we made for 10 times the stock price of the day I had that conversation with Bob just 6 months before. And I will say Bob to this day credits the sale of the business at that multiple because of the work I did. He said, Rich, you did it. You made us interesting enough to be purchased. And then it was then it was all hell broke loose because the internet bubble just blew up and everything fell apart. But the process worked, and the reasoning was sound, and the what I created, which I now have run Menlo for almost 25 years, is proof in the pudding that what we were pursuing at Interface worked because we took all that stuff into Menlo. Everything we learned at Interface, we brought into Menlo Innovations.
You, what Bob told you, you made this an interesting place to sell. Going across verticals.
Here's exactly what he said,
Yeah.
actually, because I
Yeah.
think these words are really important. It's been 25 years, so forgive the old man for not remembering things immediately. What Bob said was, he said, Rich, what you did inside of Interface made Interface Systems as a selling, or not selling the company,
Yeah.
but he
Yeah.
said, you made us easier to buy from for our customers. And he
Mm.
said that made it an easier company to sell because our customers were now inexorably involved in what we were building because of the way our process included the customer voice in the process by which we were designing and building software. Because remember, my goal was to delight the end users.
Mhm.
And most software doesn't do that. Most software sucks. Most software people say, I don't care how big the companies are these days, pick any of the big package software vendors out there, whether it's in the CRM space or the ERP or the electronic medical records, almost to a person, the people who use that software every day say, I hate this. It makes my life harder.
Mm.
We were taking people from I hate this to I love this. And that made Interface Systems easier to buy from.
Even better, your quote. Some people right now listening are saying, I hate this in the context of my job, right?
Mm-hmm.
And want to transition to the I love this. And maybe, well, probably some executives that have the ability to make that transformation happen. And we've been talking joy. What is the first step to make that transition happen?
So one of those other click moments for me is the starting place for me personally, and I think everybody can relate to this. When I first became a VP at Interface Systems, this was 1997, I took my youngest daughter in to work with me. She was
Mm.
8 at the time, and she was whatever grade you're in, second grade or something at 8 years old. And it was one of these take your child to work days where you're supposed to like take your child to work and you're going to inspire them to a career of their own because they're going to see what their parent does all day, right? So I take my daughter in to watch the VP work all day. Can you imagine a more boring day for an 8-year-old than to watch a VP? What's she supposed to do? Come out at the end of the day and say, oh my gosh, my dad does email all day long. I can't wait to get out in the work world. That's not going to work. So she wisely brought her coloring books, crayons, and stickers, sat at my task table all day watching the work of the VP.
Mm.
And then at the end of the day, I thought, you know what? I better ask her because her teacher's going to ask her tomorrow. I said, Sarah, what did you learn today? Oh my. I didn't realize how much attention she was paying. It's a smart kid. She said, what I saw, Dad, is you're really important here. I said, what do you mean? She said, what I saw is people lining up outside your door and they couldn't move forward until you made a decision for them.
Wow.
And she was really proud. Like, my dad's the smartest guy in the room. I was instantly mortified because I realized I
Mm.
created a system of work I was leading a system of work. This was before the Java factory, before all the transformation by 2 years, where I was answer man and people couldn't move. This organization wasn't going to move faster than me. And the only way to scale a hero-based organization is to scale the heroes. And the only way to do that is overtime. And I'm literally looking across the table at this 8-year-old thinking to myself, I don't want to miss the best parts of being a dad. And so starting place for anybody listening has to be inside. Start with you. Until you change you, I mean, changing others is hard no matter what. But if you're trying to do it before you do the self-work that I needed to do to become a different kind of leader where I didn't have to be central to everything, it was never going to work otherwise. So the starting place right in here.
Building a joyful human workplace doesn't take off the stress of deadlines and struggle and pressure and all those things. Can you talk through that tension?
Yeah. So what's wonderful about a good system of work is when the pressures rise, and they always do, because I will tell you, Menlo Innovations has regular customers that have budgets and deadlines and goals, and they want them met. So we don't somehow get to like cherry pick the easiest customers on the planet to work for, the ones that are the most understanding. Oh no, you guys have a great culture. You can take as long as you need. Like, no, that does not happen. Believe me. But here's the test, because the pressure rises at Menlo just like it does everywhere. The question becomes, when the pressure rises, when the times get challenging, do you flee towards your process or do you flee away from it? If you flee towards your process, then you have a good system of work. If your system of work only works when things are normal and okay, you don't actually have a system of work. You have a country club that, tanks roll through every couple of years, and you wonder what the heck happened. And so what you have at Menlo, for example, just give you a sampling of things, just show you how I think about this. So remember, we pair people. Okay, that's a crazy concept. Right?
What's even crazier is you switch the pairing every 5 days.
Yep. So, but just start with pairing, right? People walk in, they see it, and they're like, "Ooh, that's really interesting. Where do you find people that like to work like that?" And then they're like, and then finally they're like, "Wait a minute. If I was doing work here, would I have to pay for both of those people?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, every minute they're working your project." Then they really want to know, well, why do you do that? I don't understand. So first resistance we get to pairing is our customers, our paying customers, right? So you have to kind of explain the value in words they can understand. But as you said, so the pairing is one thing, and never being alone. I can tell you just that construct alone, and any parent who's ever raised teenagers, I know parents can do it by themselves, and many do, but usually you want a pair partner there. Mm-hmm. That can be really helpful because, all work is hard. I don't care what profession you're in, it's hard. And when you have a buddy who can walk through the dark forest with you, that's really helpful. Now let's start switching the pairs, as you said. And not willy-nilly. This is really systematic thinking about who pairs with whom and why. So let's say we have a project team that has like 4 people on it. And every week we're switching those pairs just among the 4. We're not bringing in new people all the time or anything. Systematically over time, we'll flex in new people because somebody took a vacation or something. But let's just say, stick with the core 4 people. Maybe there was one other person that floated in every time there was a vacation, one of the 4. And all of a sudden the customer comes and says, "Hey, you guys got to go faster. We need more done. We came up with a new idea, a new customer arrived. You need to go twice as fast." Well, in my old system of work, that was overtime, 80 hours worth of work for every individual, because there was no other alternative. You couldn't add more people. That would actually break Brooks' law and make the project go slower. We don't have Brooks' law apply in our world, because you take the 4 and you add 4 more in with the original 4. And I will tell you, we've watched it happen for 25 years. Within it, no more than 2 weeks, that team is now producing twice the outcomes with 40-hour work weeks, not crazy overtime. And because they're not tired, they're not putting in more bugs than they're taking out. So you're not creating this massive technical debt that most teams do when they're under fire, because we've got crisp minds sharing information. And then with the 8, we're switching those folks around. So everybody knows all of the code. And because we're sitting in close collaboration with one another, literally shoulder to shoulder, people are overhearing the conversations of their peers. And they might hear a peer say, hey, I don't know what that table in the database is for. And like the people sitting next to you, like, we made it yesterday. Let us tell you what it's there for. Right. So all of those simple constructs, pairing, switching the pairs, having people sit close together, keeping the team cohesive throughout the course of a project, all those things lead to higher quality. And when the stress comes, our system, and I like this word, I didn't coin it, of course, there's famous books written about it, but our system is anti-fragile. It actually gets stronger when the pressure comes because, again, we're not working tons of overtime, so we're not getting tired. We're not making stupid decisions. We don't have individual towers of knowledge that can't take a vacation for years on end because the project hasn't ended yet. Everybody gets to participate in this system of work, and it becomes trivial to onboard new people, whether they're new to the project or new to Menlo. So all of those things fold in on one another to create a system of work that it naturally has to deal with the pressures of the outside customers.
What happens if my partner is sick?
Yeah, so that's one of the delights of switching the pair. So number one, if your partner's sick, they should stay home because communicable disease is the worst thing that can happen inside of Menlo. So you're sick, stay home. And but the beautiful thing, and this happens, I mean, we're a small team. We've got about 50 people. That kind of thing's going to happen every day, right? With 50 people, at least one person's going to have something, it doesn't even need to be illness. My car didn't work. My kid's sick. I got to stay home, whatever. But because we've been doing all this systematic rotation, I can say, hey, Lathan, we're going to plug you in on this project. And you're like, oh, I haven't been on it for a few weeks. That's okay. You remember enough, and we're going to plug you in with somebody who knows exactly what they're doing, because that's the beauty of the pairing model is we're not going to just pair you with a brand new person. We're going to pair you with somebody who's experienced on the project. And because you've been switching yourself every 2 weeks or every week in our world, you're so used to being onboarded, you don't need the whole context of the project. Just give me the local context here. And over time, if I stay on the project for a while, I'll start to learn the bigger and bigger context. So yeah, we deal with that every single day.
Okay, last 2 questions. I could talk to you for hours, Rich. This is
I was
so
going to
good.
say, liar, we could keep going. By the way, I love talking about this stuff, so you could probably sense that.
You wrote Joy Inc., you wrote Chief Joy Officer. What is the blank page that corporate America still isn't getting that would be your 3rd book if you wrote one?
Yeah, I toyed with this idea, and I still think it might be a good one. I actually mocked up the cover, and it was Joy Inc. 2, just like imagine you get like red lipstick and just write 2. How we rebuilt the workplace people love, because there's an interesting story of the Menlo of March 1st of 2020, and then the Menlo of March 16th of 2020, the Menlo of March 1st of 2021, and the Menlo of March 1st of 2025. I mean, I thought mistakenly, big mistake on my part. I can still make big mistakes at my seasoned experience my age. I thought as soon as the pandemic was over, and I always ask everybody, is it actually over? Because we had a little COVID outbreak just before Thanksgiving at Menlo. We sent everybody home, and they worked from home for the rest of the week. So we can still do that if we need to. But But I thought, oh, when the pandemic's over and, people can come back to the office, I thought, oh, just snap our fingers, come on back. No,
Mm.
brain cells had changed, no, brain patterns had changed, work patterns had changed, all that kind of stuff. And so I think, I will simply say the reason I think the book could be compelling is it is almost universally true now. When I talk to CEOs out there in the world, they look at me and say, how did you do it?
Mm.
I'm like, well, how did you get people to come back? They said, we've been trying for years to get them to come back. And they want to know, the commercial real estate people want to know, you know, they're all
Mm.
trying to figure out how did you do it? And nobody else seems to be able to. And, one of the simple constructs I shared with people is I said, and it took us a while to figure this one out because everybody was coming back saying, I'm really personally more productive at home. And then finally dawned on us like, do you know how little we care about individual productivity? We're talking about team effectiveness here, and we're more effective when we are in a room together than we are when we're all split apart. And that started to break through the barriers in people's minds, even our long-term, players on the team who got really used to just waking up in their pajamas and going to work without, even showering or that sort of thing. And now it was like a years long process to get to where we are today. Um, so I don't know if that book is interesting. I just know a lot of people ask me about those kind of constructs, like how did you get people back?
Before I ask you the last question, I want you to tell people where they can access and you as a person, and also the books that you've written and the books that the Joy Inc. #2 that you haven't written yet.
Yeah, you just keep sending me somebody can send me messages and say, do it. And I'll send them to my publisher. Um, so number one, connecting with me is easy. Just go to LinkedIn, say, hey, I listened to the podcast with Lathan. It was great. I'd love to connect with you. And that's like an automatic yes, when people actually tell me why they want to link in with me. So, send that little extra note. So connecting with me is pretty easy. Uh, um, Connecting with Menlo to come see us is incredibly trivial now. We still get
Mm.
thousands of people who travel from all over the world, get on airplanes, come to Ann Arbor, Michigan, and visit, and that's still an option. But we learned how to do virtual tours, then of the virtual Menlo, and now of the real Menlo. And so now you can come visit Menlo just by the click of a button from wherever you are in the world. And again, we still are getting thousands of people. I think last count we had 49 of the 50 US states and
Wow.
like 77 countries that have visited since the pandemic. But people are still coming in person too. So either one of those options is available. We do a couple of free virtual tours a month, so you don't even have to pay anything. And and then the books, they're available wherever books are sold. I mean, every possible venue for books. Books are there too. I got to read personally the second audio book.
Nice.
So if you like my voice on this podcast, you probably like the book. I did not get to read Joy Inc., and that was very painful for me, but that's okay. But yeah, they're in print, they're ebooks, they're audiobooks, so wherever books are sold. Go to your favorite book site.
Last
And if you
question.
want to sign one, you could order it off the Menlo website and just put a little note in and said, have Rich sign it. No, we'll send it out to you.
That's awesome. So going back to you in your car in your mid-30s, you're double backing your double back because work is a dread. You have your radio on, and there's a guy on the radio that talks about work being joy. How would you have taken that in that time? What would have made you sniff it out? Where would your BS detector have been, and what would have made you be like, okay, this guy is legit?
Yeah, no, I think the BS detector is very important. I think that one of our finest tuned senses of smells as human beings is the smell for authenticity. And so I would say to anybody who's hearing this conversation and doubting, I'd say, of course you are. That's the most natural thing in the world to do, and you should be suspicious. Come visit, not because we've created the perfect workplace, because we haven't. Not because we've discovered the one true way of working, because we haven't. But what we offer the world on a visit is to come see an example of a real culture that you can torture with questions, just like you have today. Not that was torturous, but uh, just I mean, you know it. You said it earlier. You and I could talk about this for hours. We literally could. And some people, I deliver an ironclad guarantee when visitors come to Menlo, whether it's for an hour, 2 hours, half a day, full day, or full week. I guarantee disappointment. And what I mean by that is you will leave likely with more questions unanswered than you came in the door with, because the rabbit hole just keeps going. And we're willing to share everything we've learned with the world. And again, I want to be very clear with your audience. We did not discover the one true way of working. It works for us. And, but your way, whatever, we call it the Menlo way, the Lathan way, it has to be personal and meaningful to you. But seeing an actual living, breathing example, I think can inspire people on a journey to joy.
Rich, brother, grateful for our conversation. Grateful for your time and looking forward to Joy Inc. Part 2 with the red lipstick cover.
Your lips to God's ears.